Imagine waking up 40,000 years ago, in the middle of an ice age winter. There is no heated house, no sleeping bag, and no weather forecast. Outside your shelter, the wind is freezing. Snow covers the ground, and the nearest fire is slowly dying. Now imagine facing that cold completely naked. For early humans, clothing was not fashion, it was survival technology. A simple animal skin could mean the difference between exploring a new land and freezing before sunrise. But humans did not always wear clothes. So when did we begin covering our bodies, and why? The strange part is that the first clothes have almost completely disappeared. Stone tools can survive for ages, but animal skins, plant fibers, and leather usually rot. Archaeologists cannot simply uncover the world's first shirt and date it. Instead, researchers search for indirect clues, tools used to scrape hides, tiny fragments of twisted fiber, needles carved from bone, and even parasites that live in our clothing. Together, these clues reveal a much older story than expected. Long before clothing existed, our ancestors had bodies covered with much more hair. Over time, humans became unusually hairless compared with other primates. This helped the body release heat while walking and running across hot environments, while sweating became an efficient cooling system. But losing thick body hair created a serious weakness. A mostly naked human can function in warm climates, but cold wind and low temperatures remove body heat quickly. Fire and shelters helped, but they were not portable. A fire could not follow a hunting group across the landscape. Clothing could. The earliest garments were probably extremely simple. Humans may have wrapped animal hides around their shoulders, tied skins around the waist, or covered themselves while sleeping. These garments needed no buttons, sleeves, or careful stitching. A hide could be held with leather, plant cord, or the wearer's hands. Preparing that hide, however, required work. Fresh skin contains flesh, fat, and moisture. If left untreated, it rots and becomes stiff. Early humans had to remove tissue, scrape the surface, stretch the hide, and repeatedly soften it. Archaeologists have found stone and bone tools used for hide processing. Neanderthals also made smooth bone tools called lissoirs to soften and finish skins. This tells us that clothing was probably developing before the appearance of advanced sewing needles. But one of the strangest clues does not come from archaeology. It comes from lice. Humans have head lice, but we also have body lice. Body lice do not usually live directly on the skin. They live and lay their eggs in clothing, moving to the body to feed. That means body lice could only evolve after humans began wearing clothes regularly. Scientists compared head lice and clothing lice DNA to estimate when they separated. The results suggest habitual clothing use began at least 83,000 years ago, possibly as early as 170,000 years ago. This does not reveal clothing's exact birthday. Genetic estimates are uncertain, and early humans may have worn garments only in some seasons. But it suggests that clothing is far older than surviving needles and textiles. At first, loose hides probably provided basic protection. But when humans entered extremely cold environments, loose coverings had serious limitations. Cold air could move underneath them. Wind could pull them away from the body. They also made running, climbing, and hunting more difficult. The solution was tailored clothing. Tailored clothing fits closer to the body. It can include separate coverings for the torso, arms, legs, feet, and head. This traps a layer of warm air near the skin and protects the wearer while moving. To make clothing like this, people needed better tools. A sharp stone point could punch holes in leather. Sinew, leather strips, or plant fibers could then bind pieces together. Later, eyed needles made stitching more controlled and precise. The earliest known eyed needles appear in Siberia roughly 40,000 years ago, with later examples found across the Caucasus, East Asia, and Europe. These needles were often carved from bone. Making one required shaping a thin point, smoothing it, and drilling a tiny eye without breaking the tool. This was not primitive work, it was precision engineering. Archaeologists also found a Spanish bone fragment, about 39,600 years old, covered with puncture marks. Researchers see it as a board used while perforating leather. This suggests that some groups were making fitted leather clothing even where eyed needles had not yet appeared. Clothing changed where humans could live. With warm garments, people could travel farther into cold regions, hunt during winter, and remain active for longer periods. Clothing worked together with fire, shelters, food storage, and cooperation. No single invention conquered the Ice Age. Survival depended on an entire system. But clothing turned the human body into something adaptable. A mammoth has thick fur that works in one type of environment. Humans could create their own artificial fur, remove it when the weather became warm, repair it when damaged, and redesign it for different conditions. In a sense, clothing allowed culture to move faster than biological evolution. But survival was only the beginning. Once clothing became common, people could use it to communicate. Materials, colors, beads, shells, and animal teeth could show identity or achievement. A garment could mark a hunter, leader, specialist, or member of another community. Clothing could also become part of rituals, trade, attraction, and status. An animal's skin was no longer just insulation. It could carry a story. This may explain why eyed needles became more important even in places where loose garments were already warm enough. Fine stitching allowed people to create clothing that was not only practical but carefully shaped and decorated. Over thousands of years, hides were joined by woven fibers. A French Neanderthal site preserved a tiny three-ply cord made from bark fibers about 41 to 52,000 years ago. It may not be clothing, but it proves complex fiber technology existed. Once humans knew how to twist fibers into cord, the same knowledge could support bags, nets, baskets, ropes, and eventually textiles. Much later, spinning and weaving transformed clothing again. Garments became lighter, more flexible, and easier to design in different shapes. So why did humans start wearing clothes? There was probably no single moment and no single reason. Early coverings may have protected skin from cold, sun, insects, rough vegetation, and injury. Regular clothing made migration into colder regions safer. Tailored garments improved movement and insulation. Decoration then transformed clothing into a social language. What began as protection became technology. What began as technology became identity. And what began with a simple piece of animal skin eventually produced uniforms, ceremonial robes, sportswear, spacesuits, and every fashion trend we know today. The next time you put on a jacket, remember that you are using an invention older than cities, agriculture, and written language. Clothing did more than cover the human body. It helped humans carry their own environment with them, and that may be one of the reasons our species was able to reach almost every corner of the planet. Subscribe to StickScope for more big questions explained with simple drawings.